IPMNation.com.
Living in a city when you're in it, watch the people walk by. And if you listen real close, you can hear them talk about their lives. And some hate it, some love it, some are thought, some are just tired. These are the people in the neighborhood, they just trying to make it out right. See, she never wanted to be.
Well, good evening, everybody. You've tuned in to Dr. John's Neighborhood. This is Dr. John Rich speaking to you. I'm glad to have you with me here for another week. I'm grateful, and that's going to be the theme for the first half of the show, grateful for this opportunity to get into your brain and give you some things to think about. After we go to the break in the middle of the show, we're going to be coming back with a pretty inspirational person who does a lot of counseling, particularly with men. He calls himself Dr. Vibe, which is, an intriguing name. We'll be talking a little bit about how he got that name and also some of the work that he does. But the lead-in to that interview, I've decided, should be about the issue of gratitude. This is a person who is inspirational, in my opinion, because he is just so grateful for how his life has panned out. He seems to have a pretty good focus and set of priorities. And there's a lot of research out there to show that an attitude of gratitude, as they said in that, what was that, like in the 60s or the 70s, maybe it was the 80s, I don't know. There was some kind of kids collection of songs, and one of them was called An Attitude of Gratitude. I remember playing it for my kids. Having an attitude of gratitude is something that actually improves people's well-being, their psychological well-being. And so I want to focus on that for a little bit here before we shift over to the interview with Dr. Vibe. Now, I want to admit going into this that being grateful is a struggle for me. I grew up in a house and in a family where the proclivity was not toward gratitude, it was more toward complaining and having a woe is me feeling about the world. And so my slant about life tends to be more on the negative side. I will admit to expecting the worst in any kind of situation, and then I've needed to learn to talk myself down from a worst case scenario perspective on things. When I look at myself, I look at my body and am not happy with how it looks, and I'm going bald, and so I focus on my baldness. And when I'm watching nature shows on television, I'm less likely to see the beauty of the nature that I'm watching and more likely to be focusing on all the death. It's just these nature shows to me are brutal. I've got these shrimp or fish or whatever, and they're swimming around, and my wife was peeking in on one of them the other day, and she was like, does these fish ever get to sleep? Because it seems like you just come out from your hole down on the bottom of the ocean to go get something to eat, and then there's some huge monster behind you with his mouth wide open, and all of a sudden you're dinner. With other people, the issue of gratitude is not one of having a negative bias toward the world. It's more toward just having a sense of entitlement, or looking at the good things in life and just treating them like that's what I expected to happen. When I get a raise at work, I'm not grateful for that. So I deserve that raise, and that's the end of it. I try to liken it in my classroom to having a sore throat. So I don't know how many of you out there get sore throats where it's so painful that it's really difficult to swallow. And almost invariably when I get a sore throat, I think to myself, All right, so it's time for me to swallow here. So I gotta kind of grab the edge of the chair because you have to swallow. So all right, here we go. And oh man, that hurts. And then I think to myself, I'm going to be so thankful when I'm able to swallow without it hurting. So I can tell you right now that at this very moment, I can swallow and it doesn't hurt. But have I thought until just now when I'm talking about it, I haven't had one thought toward how grateful I was that I was able to swallow without it hurting. That's just the normal state of affairs. So it's been my observation that when things are bad, we tend to focus on at some point things are going to get better, and we tell ourselves that we're going to be grateful for those things happening. But in fact, when the good things happen, we're just floating around kind of unconsciously, not thinking about how thankful we are for those things. And so it seems, I guess the lesson that I want to give this afternoon or evening is that gratitude is a practice. It's an intentional practice. It's something that you have to keep on the forefront of your mind. It doesn't come naturally to most people. And I believe that being grateful for your life and the things in your life is a source of strength that can carry any of us forward. And then when we encounter some kind of adversity, those moments where we've taught ourselves and practiced this attitude of gratitude can help us to get through. So according to this one study that I want to talk to you about a little bit, it's called Gratitude Counting Blessings versus Burdens. It's by two researchers whose last names are Emmons and McCullough, that the phenomenon of gratitude, the feeling of gratitude, has two parts to it. The first part is that you recognize that you just had something positive happen to you. So when you're grateful, you are realizing that something just occurred and it was positive. And the second step is that we recognize that some external source is the cause of that positive thing. So we're thankful because our children said or did something that made our heart melt. Or we're thankful because we can recognize that the experience that we're living right now is wonderful. We're thankful for our friends. We're thankful for God, if you're a believer in God. External things, we're grateful for the external things. It makes sense to me. You don't necessarily feel grateful for something that happened that had to do with your hard work or effort. You may feel pride in that situation, but gratitude has to do with being grateful for something external, providing us with something positive. So this study was talking about how gratitude feels good. It's connected with our well-being. I think that if you were to take a minute now, I'm going to give you just a couple seconds of silence here. If you were to think a minute now of just 2 or 3 things for which you're grateful, I have a feeling that if you really focus on those, it will feel good to call those to mind. So just take a couple seconds and think about a couple things for which you're grateful. So when I did that, I was thinking about my family, and I was thinking about my house, and I was thinking about some of the experiences that I've had when I was younger that helped bring me to the place where I am right now. And I felt a little tingly, I guess, or a little chill. There was something about the experience of actually thinking about those things, intentionally calling to mind things for which I'm thankful, that lifted my spirits. You can probably hear my dog in the background. I'm not always thankful for him because Sometimes he's a pain in the neck, but I am grateful that I have a dog. And I think one of the lessons about gratitude is that you can be thankful for almost anything. In fact, I remember when I used to go to church all the time that there was one person, a minister, who actually talked about how you can even be grateful when things aren't going well. Because when things aren't going well, there's an opportunity for a lesson. Now, that's a pretty difficult practice. I think you have to be pretty enlightened to look at the positive or look at the negative things and then figure out a way to look at it in a positive fashion. But it is part of a life of gratitude. Am I grateful right now that in the background of this radio show that I'm recording, I have my dog barking and I can't really do very much about it? Not really. I'm not very grateful for that. I feel like my dog is perhaps ruining the show, but maybe not. Maybe it's okay to have that in the background. I'm going to try to ignore it. Brings you back to how I started, which was that being grateful is a struggle for me. So these researchers who were doing this article, which I'm going to post on my website, drjohnrich.com, I'm guessing probably next Tuesday, as I post articles on my site on Tuesdays. They wanted to know whether being grateful or having experiences where you feel grateful is actually connected to your well-being. They point out that religious leaders and philosophers, there have been plenty of people who have talked about how being grateful can make you feel better about your life and can increase your happiness. And what these researchers wanted to know was whether or not that was actually true. Was there a scientific way to try to test whether that held up? And they came up with a study that I think is pretty interesting. So they had 4 groups in this study. And I'm going to tell you about what these 4 groups had to do, and this is how they were comparing people who were being asked to think about different things in different ways. So the first group was called the gratitude-inducing group. This is the group that we want to know, does this group end up feeling happier or doing things in their life as a result of having their gratitude induced as opposed to some of the other groups. So the gratitude-inducing group was told the following: there are many things in our lives, both large and small, that we might be grateful for. Think back over the past week and write down on the lines below up to 5 things in your life that you are grateful or thankful for. And I would encourage you to do this. In fact, some of the books that I've read have recommended that every night you can head yourself off to sleep by thinking about 1 or 2 or 3 things that happened that day that you can be grateful for. That it really is when I remember to do it, and I don't remember to do it all that often, but when I remember to do it, it's a pretty nice way to drift off to sleep. So examples of gratitude-inducing experiences that the participants listed were waking up this morning, the generosity of their friends, to God for giving me determination, wonderful parents, and somebody said the Rolling Stones. So maybe that's you. You're grateful for the Rolling Stones. Sure, why not? The next group was called the Hassles condition. In the Hassles condition, the people were told that hassles are irritants, things that annoy or bother you. They occur in various domains of life, including relationships, work, school, housing, finances, or health. So think back over today and on the lines below, list up to 5 hassles that occurred in your life. I would say that one of the hassles that I would probably write down right now is my dog outside barking. Examples of hassles listed by participants were as follows. Hard to find parking. You've had that happen, right? That can get on your nerves. A messy kitchen that no one will clean. The finances depleting quickly. Having a horrible test in my psychology class. stupid people driving, doing a favor for a friend who didn't appreciate it. So what we're trying to do is in the one group, we're trying to get people to be more conscious of the things they're grateful for. In the second group, we're trying to get the participants to be focusing more on the things that have gotten on their nerves. And we have a third group that's basically what you would call a control group. It's called the events condition. They were asked, what were some of the events or circumstances that affected you in the past week? Think back over the past week and write down on the lines below the 5 events that had an impact on you. So we're not asking people to be grateful, and we're not asking people to be annoyed. We're just asking them to list some things that have happened. And then in another study, they had a 4th condition that was called the downward social comparison condition. The idea is that if you're thinking about yourself in relation to other people, if you're thinking about how you don't have as much money as your neighbor, or you're not as attractive as the person at work or whatever, that can possibly lead to some unhappiness. So those participants were told it's human nature to compare ourselves to others. We may be better off than others in some ways and less fortunate than other people in other ways. Think about ways in which you're better off than others, things that you have that they don't, and write these down in the spaces below. And so we're trying to induce this concept of downward social comparison. But what we really want to know is whether the gratitude-inducing group really ends up being affected just by being asked to write down some things for which they're grateful. And the lesson for you, if it turns out, and I wonder whether, if it turns out that the gratitude-inducing group has some positive results as a function of them writing down some things for which they're grateful, then this may be something that you may want to do in your life too. If you're a little grumpy sourpuss like I am sometimes, this might be a way to kind of change the way you think about things. And if you're somebody who's walking around all entitled, like everything good is supposed to happen to you and you don't need to be grateful because you deserve it, even though you don't necessarily deserve it, then this might also be something for you to listen to. So what were the results? Well, the results were that the people who were in the gratitude-inducing group had, over a period of time, more positive and optimistic thoughts about their own life. They exercised more. They reported sleeping more and having a better quality of sleep. They reported a higher positive affect or, emotional positiveness. They actually also were more likely to have helped somebody else with a problem after they participated in the exercise or offered somebody emotional support than the people who were in the other groups. And that's pretty amazing, right? I mean, this experiment didn't take very long. People were just sat down and asked to list 5 things for which they were grateful, and somehow it seems that it's possible that it sparked this good feeling that inspires a person who feels like that to pass that good feeling on to other people. Another thing, so the researchers say that they feel like gratitude is pro-social, that being grateful activates a moral compass. It makes you think about other people and your place in the world and things that you can do to try to make another person's life better. Because now that you feel like you have a life for which you can be grateful, wouldn't it be nice to pass that on to somebody else and give them an opportunity to feel the same kind of way? So they have a great expression here, and this will probably be the title of the article when I write it, a great expression to describe what these results really mean, and they call it an upward spiral. So you've heard of a downward spiral. That's my perspective on life. I can almost mimic the way it was in my house growing up, that even when something good happened, the perspective about it was, okay, all right, so when is this going to turn to shit? Here we go, right? Okay, this nice, sure, it's great that happened, but you just wait, you're going to see the other shoe's going to fall, or whatever metaphor you want to throw in here. This isn't going to last. So even focusing on the negative when something positive has happened. There's a guy named Dr. Wayne Dyer. If you've never read or heard any of his stuff, you might want to look that up on YouTube or at the library. He has a funny story for people who look at life from the negative side. I love this story. So he was at a speaking engagement, and somebody came up to him and said hello. I haven't seen you for a while. And Dr. Dyer said, oh, yeah, it's great to see you. How have you been? And he said, well, I'm sick. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. How long have you been sick? And his answer was, well, in 3 weeks, it'll be a month. I know I'm sitting alone in my living room and I'm laughing at my own thing that I just said, but that is a funny story. How long have you been sick? In 3 weeks, it'll be a month. So in other words, you've been sick for a week. That's not really all that bad. Anyway, so back to the upward spiral as opposed to the downward spiral. They draw the picture like this, that having positive emotions can broaden your mindset. It can give you, it opens up your ability to be flexible in your thinking and to be creative in your thinking. And that means that when something goes wrong or you have a problem, you're in a better position to not look at it like it's a crisis, but instead to look at it and try to figure out how you might be able to navigate your way through it. Those positive emotions also build resources. So the more that you practice gratitude, the more you're building up emotional immunity, or just kind of like setting yourself up with some resources that you can call upon in times of need. And you're feeling stressed out, or when you've got adversity in your life, having practiced and build up all those positive emotions over a period of time can help you ride through that storm. And so as a result of being grateful and practicing this issue of gratitude, that can inspire some kind of reciprocity. In other words, you're feeling grateful, and so you want to pass that on to somebody else and make them feel grateful. And by doing that, you're helping your friends and your family and the people in your network have that same kind of positive feeling. That can build your friendship with those people. It can grow the bonds that you have with other people. And then those people feel loved and cared for and grateful, and they have that positive affect that comes as a result of looking at things from the positive side, and they want to return the favor to you, and they also want to pass it on to others. So that social support that you're building by passing on that gratitude to other people is also a resource that you can draw upon if you ever need to call somebody and ask for a favor. I can guarantee that people like the Edelmans, who are friends of ours here in the Delaware area, are very positive people, and if they called upon me to do them a favor, I would be more than willing to drop what I was doing and help. Because, and here's how we'll end it, according to the authors, gratitude is a form of love. And I just think that that's so beautiful. So despite my struggles to look at life from the positive, a positive side, I know that the research out there says that that is the better way to look at things. You've been listening to my show. Maybe you don't have an inkling that I have trouble looking at the positive side because I talk about positive parenting and I'm always trying to have a positive spin on things, but that's because I think at the moment there's just enough meanness and hatred out there. It doesn't need me to contribute to it anymore. There would need to be more voices who are trying to inspire other people and trying to make people feel good about their life and trying to help people think about their life in a more proactive and positive way. Because the way that you're going to achieve your goals is by really believing that you can go out there and achieve them. So with that, I'm going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Dr. Vibe, and I think that you're going to see that Dr. Vibe is an inspiring figure. It was a good conversation. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. So we'll be right back.
10 years ago, the energy market was deregulated. This opened the market to new suppliers. Ambit Energy is one of those suppliers. Go to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com and see how you can not only get free energy by switching to Ambit, you can also earn travel reward points while lowering your utility bills. Learn more by going to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. Start saving today.
ipmnation.com.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. I have on the line somebody that I've been excited to interview for some time. His name is Dr. Vibe. He's the host of the Dr. Vibe Show. Say hello, Dr. Vibe.
Hey, what is up, John? It is Dr. Vibe here from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I don't know if I'm your first international guest, but I'm going to try and be your best. I'm going to be your best international guest. Let's put it that way.
Well, considering that so far you are my first international guest, I guarantee you'll be my best international guest.
Well, I'm going to set the bar high, and if someone overrides me, I'm going to come back on to take it back. All right?
Fantastic. So,
yeah.
So how are you?
I am blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. How about yourself today?
I don't have an answer that's nearly that great, but that's a fantastic answer. Can you tell us a little bit more about? I know that you answer that way a lot when people ask how you are. Can you tell us a little bit more about all the parts therein?
Well, I know, I'm not going to say I feel, I know I am blessed because I'm still alive. And a lot of times sometimes I'll say to people, I say, how you doing? And sometimes I'll say that and also say, I'm still above ground.
Okay, right.
Right? So I depending on the environment, I'll put some influence and funniness on it. And I'll say to people, do you want a real answer? You want a funny answer? So I'm ready to give anything they want back, depending on what sort of mood they're in.
Yeah.
And then highly favored, I believe in a higher being. And I am favored because I have the ability, I've been given the opportunity not only to be positive on myself, but add light to people's lives. And I think that's a favor that I have been given that I don't take for granted. So I know I'm very highly favored because people tell me that I add light to their lives.
Wow.
And the last part, two more parts, a magnet for miracles. I know that I have in me to bring miracles not only to my life, but more impact other people's lives. So I feel that I'm a magnet for miracles that can help bring miracles to people's lives. And then a solution for someone's problem, I feel that I'm that too. I know that through my experiences and through other experiences that people have shared with me, I can be, if not directly, but indirectly, a solution to a lot of people's problems.
So I think I know what your answer is going to be to this, but I still want to ask it because I imagine you'll have a pretty inspirational answer. So when you answer that way, do you feel that you've been set apart to be able to give that answer, or is that the kind of answer that anybody could give?
Anyone can give it if they believe it.
So
you've got to believe it. And the thing I also say, John, is that when you say something to yourself, the first person that hears it is you.
Right.
Not the other person, it's you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the whole issue of, being grateful to be above ground, I have in my office, I have a blackboard. The good professor has to have a blackboard in his office.
Sure.
And on the blackboard right next to me, I have written, you have more time in your life right now than you ever will have again. And that's a reminder to me that where I am at that particular moment is, it's a time to be grateful. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can somewhat, we have some things in common other than being men that you're an educator. My father was a public school teacher in the same school for 38 years.
Wow. Yeah, I've got some teachers in my background as well. My mother is a teacher. My wife is a teacher.
Yeah, and I'll be transparent as much as I can be. When I was younger, I didn't take what he did very seriously. But one day, his school, when he was there at the time, he's retired now, was celebrating their 100th anniversary.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let me go support. So when I walked into the foyer of the school, there was a grand piano that had been donated. And I looked at the plate on the grand piano, Morley Safer of 60 Minutes. Morley Safer grew up in Toronto and went to that school and donated that piano.
Nice.
So then I walked up the stairs, walked into my dad's classroom, and I saw just something special that I'll never forget. I saw my dad speaking with past and current students. And in some families, he had taught 3 generations of the same family.
Huh. Yeah, so when you say that you didn't take his work seriously just because you were young, is that what you mean? Or
it was because he was young. But then when I saw the positive impact that it had on families, and there's some students that still keep in touch with him today, even though he's been retired for many years. And it's just making me think this giving and this service side of me a lot of it came from my dad. And also my mom's a nurse. So they've always been servers.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about what it is you do and how you got yourself on this journey. Like what's the confluence of events and influences that made you want to dedicate your life to trying to make the world a better place?
Well, John, we don't have 3 parts of this conversation. We may need to. So I'm going to give an edited version.
Okay, all right.
So, many, many years ago,
when
I had hair, I don't have hair now.
All right.
After I graduated from university, I said, great. I don't want to read any more books. I don't want to write any more essays. I'm done. Finished.
Right.
There's a bookstore. It's no longer in existence in downtown Toronto, Black-owned bookstore. I'll give the name, Burke's Bookstore, owned by Sam and Rita Burke. Wonderful people, still great servers of the community. And I walked in there, and I saw a book. And before we went on to this recording, I wanted to make sure I had the book in my hand.
Yeah.
It was the title of a book called Black Men, Obsolete, Single, and Dangerous, The African-American Family in Transition. So I took this book off the rack, and I sat down and I started reading it. I read a chapter, I bought it, and I read the whole book in one night.
Wow.
And it impacted me. And I said, you know what? Some way, somehow, I want to do something to leave a positive impact on African Canadian men. At that time, that was the target market.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to start an online show, an online conversation. And I'll date myself a little bit. The first conversation I had for what was the Dr. Vibe show and still is the Dr. Vibe show was about Michael Vick and the dogs.
Oh.
Now, listeners may not know about that, so you have to go Google and find out about that. And like many great dreams, I had a laptop and a dream, just like yourself, who started these great conversations and just started doing that, myself and another co-host at the time. And what the original purpose was is to provide a safe space for African Canadian men to express what was on their hearts, what's in their hearts and in their minds.
Do you feel like it's not safe for people to do that?
I think today it's more safe than it was because there's more opportunity and more outlets. Back then, the digital marketplace was not as robust and as accessible as it is now.
Right.
But back then, it was very limited, and we just started having conversations, myself and the co-host at the time. Then I said, you know what? Let's take a break. So we took a break for a few months because I feel that many things have a birth, death, and resurrection.
Okay.
So we came back, started to do some more conversations, and then I thought, you know what? People are just going to get tired of listening to me and my co-hosts. What are we going to do? So I like to go for easy wins. So I started... When I went out socially to friends' homes, I would take my laptop, take my microphone, put it down in the room. We just have conversations.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, it's time to stretch myself a little bit more and say, okay, let me see if I can get people on the conversation. And let me just say that I do not use the word interview. I like to do conversations.
Okay.
Conversations are better for most people than interviews, because a lot of times when people think interviews, they get all nervous. Oh, I got to say the right thing.
Right.
So I tell people conversations.
Yeah.
So then I thought, okay, let's get people who I don't know on the conversation. And there was a gentleman I looked at first getting on the Dr. Vibe show. He lived in Hamilton, which is about an hour and 15 minutes drive from where I live. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, if you want to interview me, you've got to come all the way out to Hamilton. I said, what happens if I'm halfway on my way to Hamilton and he cancels?
Uh-huh.
So I said, okay, I've got to find a way to get more reach without sacrificing a lot of time.
Okay.
So then I started, reached out to people, and long story short, then it became to the point where I do 95% of my conversations online, whether it's online audio like you are doing now, though we're pre-recorded, or I'll do them online live, audio or video. So that's where it's gone to, and I've done over 2,000 conversations.
Wow. Yeah. And you just walk away. My experience has been early on in my radio career here, that you walk away from the conversations just feeling kind of filled up. I feel every time like somebody has given me information or inspiration or just something that I didn't have before.
I agree with that. Now, I will just add on to that. They've given me the most valuable thing that they have, in my opinion. They've given me their time.
Yeah.
And I don't take it for granted. Every time someone comes on for the first time, I say, hey, my opening will be, welcome a new friend to the Dr. Vibe show for the first time and not the last time.
Yeah. So, and I don't think I've ever told you this, and I don't think a lot of people know this, but before I was a professor, I was actually a minister. And one of the things that I really liked about that job that I've missed for a long time is that in that role as a minister, you could actually sit down with somebody and ask them how things are going, and they would actually tell you how things are going, that there's a certain level of trust that comes with the office that I lost, or at least I felt like I lost when I didn't have that behind me. And the radio gig is allowing me to ask people deeper questions. And because of the format, I feel like I'm getting back to it again. So it's talking about being blessed.
That's a great insight. And I fully agree with that. And interesting aligning what you just said about being a minister. There have been every so often people come to me and say, you should become a minister. Mm-hmm. And I say, if God has it in his plan, he'll do it. If not, I just keep on keeping on. And earlier on in my journey, I had the inkling to become a teacher like my father. I applied twice, was rejected once, and got on the waiting list a second time. I said, you know what, I'm not going to go there. Mm-hmm. But I find myself, people are treating me like a teacher or a mentor, an elder as I go on in my journey, and also to not all education is done in the classroom.
Yeah, and I think there'll be plenty of people inside the church who would say that you are doing ministry, even if you don't have the letters after your name or the special robe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fully agree.
So we were talking before the show about my own work, and I was sharing with you just some of the things that a person like me early on is trying to figure out, how to use social media and how to get more people to listen and things like that. And you were saying that I made a comment about the fact that what I was trying to do was to make the world a better place, and I was trying to use my platform to get more people to think more clearly about things like parenting and setting goals and stuff like that. And what you said to me that I thought was pretty insightful and well said was that I had figured out my why, And when you figure out what your why is, the how comes naturally. So can you share with us, what's your why?
My why is, it changes, but right now my why is to be a positive light in every man's life that I can touch.
And why do you want to do that?
Why do I want to do that? Well, and people may push back on me on this, but I am a firm believer that the better that men are in society, the better the society will be. And that's why I feel that. And I've realized in my journey that I'm very blessed. My father's still alive.
My father is not. So you are blessed there.
My condolences. And I've really rolled up my sleeves into getting into the hearts and minds of men. Because I realize that there's a lot of men out there that are screaming and nothing's coming out.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
You and I both write for a great site called the Good Men Project. If people haven't heard of that, just go to goodmenproject.com and you'll see all sorts of articles written either by men or for men or both. And I know that you write for them. And so maybe we can center specifically on fathers, since that's something that I'm writing a lot about. And what is it that you would want to say to people who are fathers out there and their role as men in the household with their children?
Well, it's very interesting, and a big shout out to the Good Men Project, to Lisa, especially Lisa Hickey. And it's actually a little interesting sidelight story. Whenever I mention the Good Men Project, people get to have a shake their head moment when they see that the Good Men Project CEO is a lady. I don't know if you ever had that reaction, but when I do that, people go, "What? A lady's running this?" And they just find it interesting. So a big shout out to Lisa. I've been blessed. Actually, I have a very special place for the Good Men Project because I'm the only online show that has a weekly episode slot on the Good Men Project.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And that's been now going on for 4.5 years. So that's been a lot of great blessings. So just want to shout out the GMP. I'd be remiss and very disrespectful if I didn't shout them out.
Yeah, and I should also give some kind thoughts for Lisa Blacker, who's my editor there.
And also Lisa's does edit some of my stuff once in a while too. And also got to give a great shout out to Wilhelm Cortez. Cannot go without mentioning his name, but we could spend the whole rest of this conversation.
Just keep mentioning people, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll leave it at there. But you wanted me to talk about fathers, and I've looked at the relationship I've had with my father, and one of the things that I look at too is there's a lot of men, as you have just shared right now, whose fathers are no longer with them.
Right.
And I think from experience, one of the most challenging days in a man's life is when he loses his father, whether he has had a good or bad relationship with his father.
Why so?
Because that man was one of the people that put you on this earth. And I did not have a great relationship with my father until about 10 years ago when I had to wheel him in on a gurney into an operation room where he had a quadruple bypass surgery.
Oh, wow.
And sitting there in the waiting room for 4.5 hours, wondering, what is that doctor going to say when he comes out?
Yeah.
And I began to say, you know what, all the missed opportunities that we didn't have to get closer, etc., together. And then when the doctor came into the waiting room and he said, he's going to be okay, I physically got down on my knees and hugged the doctor's leg. So now I can say to fathers who don't have their dad around anymore, I don't think and I'm not just talking about fathers, I'm talking about men in period, because I deal with young men who are 16 to 60. I don't think most men out there would not like to have a good relationship with their father.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? So, and it's interesting because about at the end of January 31st, I was blessed to host a conversation of black men, most of them black fathers. and I titled the conversation "Minding Our Minds," in regards to Black men and mental health. And at the best of times, we don't expect men to come out and talk about those issues or those challenges. I don't like using the word those challenges. And the day before the event, there were only 5 people that registered. We ended up getting 40.
Wow.
And I had an agenda that I wanted to cover that evening. But what a blessing. I didn't even get to the agenda. We spent 2.5 hours, men talking about their relationship with their father.
Wow. Yeah, that's touching. And, I feel like one of the things to come out of Good Men Project and my own writing is that men have a lot of pressure on them not to share their emotions. And so emotions can bottle up because there aren't a lot of, as you put it earlier, safe places for people to talk honestly about those things. For me, my relationship with my father was pretty good until he became mentally ill. And then I had a good section of my adolescence where he was just unavailable, lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling, not interacting with me at all. He died when I was 22, and in the few years leading up to that, I think he got some kind of medication that helped bring him out of the cloud enough that he and I started to connect to the point where he was giving me advice, and I still remember some of the things that he taught me. And, for those people out there who are listening who still have their father, I would encourage you to take advantage of that relationship because it's a powerful one. And when the time is up and your father isn't available anymore, you'll be glad that you took advantage of his presence and his wisdom.
Absolutely. And I'll just add some things that are running through my mind. I don't want to forget them.
Yeah. There's so many things to say, right?
Yeah. I with my dad, he's right now living in Florida. He goes away for a few months. He calls me every day.
Wow.
And if he doesn't get a hold of me, when he does, he say, "What have you done? Deserted your dad?" So he puts a guilt trip on me in regards to that. But he says to me that as long as he can go to bed and his kids aren't in trouble, everything's good.
Yeah.
And I think no more powerful statement than that. He also tells me that whenever I have a challenge, I'm blessed enough to be the oldest son. He says, whenever I have a challenge, I'm coming to you first for solutions. And I have a younger brother. So more and more as I go through this journey, I'm the middle one between my brother and my dad. Because sometimes my dad doesn't agree with some of the things my brother's doing. So my dad calls to me to get some thought process and some calming. Right. And then my younger brother will, because, I love my older brother. So I feel like I'm a parent between two of them sometimes, if you can relate. So it's so great. And one of the things I do with fathers these days, if I can get to that level with a father, I said, okay, you're a father. Yes. Do you have kids? Yes. I say, okay, just give me about 30, 45 seconds of your time. And he says, what do you want to talk about? I said, okay, your kids are going to probably outlive you, God willing. Okay. And I say, okay, and let's pray and let's speak it that your kids are going to have a place to live. Yes, let's say that. Wouldn't you like it that when people go into that house or wherever they're living, that there's a picture of you? Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then say, what do you want your child or children to say when someone points at your picture?
That's great. What do people say when you ask them that? What are some of the things that they say?
Well, first of all, I'd say 75% of the fathers that I say that to have never had something like that said to them before.
Yeah.
And there's silence, and you can just see it absorbing going from their head to their heart. And they go, yeah. They get it.
Right.
They get it, and they sort of say, and they'll say, thank you for sharing that with me. And I go, hey, that's just really important that, I just wanted to share that with you. And they sort of say, wow. And the other thing I say to a lot of fathers and to a lot of men too is, how's your heart? And most guys, most fathers, most men will say, oh, well, I'm working out every day. I do this, I do that. I say, that's not the heart I'm talking about.
Okay.
Man. I'm talking about how's your emotional heart.
Yeah.
You know, getting back to what I said at the beginning, there are a number of men that are screaming and nothing's coming out.
Huh. Yeah, I have this is going to seem shameless, but I'll do it anyway. I have a book coming out that's about parenting. It'll be sometime in May, I think. And one of the things that I'm talking about in there is to try to specifically identify what your goals are as a parent, or what you want, in this case, your kids to say about you when you aren't there anymore. And then to try to figure out, well, what kinds of behaviors and activities and uses of your time are going to get you to that goal most effectively. And so it's interesting, this question that you have, what do you want your kids to say about you after you're gone? Can you tell me like a few specific things that people have said when they've answered that question? They want their kids to say what about them?
Some of them, I've had gentlemen say that I want them to know that I did everything I can to give them the best I could for their future.
Yeah.
Another father would tell me that, what did he say the other day? Another gentleman said that I got a lot of work to do.
Huh.
But he was being transparent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I got a lot of work to do. Others will say, I think I said this earlier, I've never had that asked of me before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what makes it an especially powerful question is that if you've thought about it, it gets you to say something out loud that can kind of re-energize your spirit in the direction that you're hoping you can go. And if it's never occurred to you before, it almost has like the person has their answer inside their brain, and it gets ignited as soon as you hear that question. It's powerful.
Yeah, sometimes there are things beyond the glimpse of the obvious, and we need people from the outside to shine the light on things that we don't see right in front of our face.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the articles that I was thinking of writing in the near future, and it seems like, how to say, I have to figure out a way to say this properly. It's just the idea that, a lot of this stuff really is about being grateful for the life we have and being cognizant of the fact that that life is going to end at some point. So these death questions, even though they seem morbid, are really life questions.
I agree with you. When people come to me saying, oh, I want to get this goal, that goal, I say, okay, let's think of the end goal and work backwards.
Right. Yep, that's perfect. That's good science too. You figure out your goal, and then you work backwards until you come up with, okay, now I need to do this, and this to get myself closer.
Exactly, and when you just work along it, because I'm also a certified empowerment coach, and I just like to let's think of the end goal and let's work backwards. And when I work a lot with fathers, and a lot of times when fathers mess up, I notice a common thing.
Okay.
They're thinking about themselves and nobody else.
Huh.
Especially a lot of times when I'm working with fathers who have kids, and when they mess up, a lot of times they're just thinking about themselves. And I have to sort of get their mindset back. I say that everything you do should be for your children. And when they start thinking like that, we start going on the right path.
Great. Well, so listen, I can't believe that we're already past 28 minutes. And so we don't have very much time left. And I wonder whether you have, some way that you can kind of end us on some action steps or, some kind of positive thought to round it out.
Well, I want to cheat and see if I can extend our time just for a few moments, because there's two things. Sure. I want to do that, secondly. But first, I want to know, and maybe your listeners have never had a chance for you to share, what started this journey for you in regards to fatherhood?
You mean in terms of the writing and speaking about the issue?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I think for me, my father, like I said, wasn't really that present for me most of my life. And so when I had children, I remember leading up to the first pregnancy, I remember thinking to myself, basically, holy shit, how do I do this? I came to the realization that I was going to have to figure out a way to do it, not based on just repeating what my father had done, because if I did that, I would just disappear. And, you know, he had a mental illness, so I'm not trying to be, you know, judging of him as much as to say that I had to kind of figure it out by looking at people who looked like they were good fathers and observing. So it was almost scientific in a way. And as a result of doing research and watching people, I think what I came up with was that all you have to do really, and it's the same in teaching, kids just have to know that they're a priority and that you love them. And when you start from that standpoint, in my opinion, then there's no room for spanking them or insulting them or shaming them. That this is really about taking a brand new person who doesn't know how the world works and showing them how to be successful in achieving their own dreams. So to me, when I decided that I was going to start the writing and the radio show and all those other things, it was based on me wanting to share that insight because it seemed like it was missing for a lot of people.
Excellent. Okay, so you want me to leave off with some things for your wonderful audience, and I want to say thank you to your audience for putting up with me for the last few moments. I hope I've added some positive value or made you think for a few seconds going,
Certainly.
So a few things, just a few random things. In regards to fathers, our whole area, fatherhood is a big challenge right now. And I'm in Canada, but I'm going to give you a stat from the United States that every night, approximately 40% of American children go to sleep in homes where their fathers aren't there.
That's a large number. Go ahead. That's a big number.
Exactly. Also, I'll leave this message to about men in general. 80% of the suicides committed by people over 40 and under 18 are by males.
Mm-hmm.
So for some reason, either really young, and this is a whole other conversation. I'd love to drill down on this.
Right.
Especially men over 40, a lot of them are quitting.
Uh-huh.
And we see a lot of events these days that can be adhered to that. But I want to encourage men, don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing more and more now, unfortunately, the two easiest emotions for some men are anger,
right,
or quitting.
Yeah. Right. And that quitting, in my opinion, can often be a fear of failing. Because when you quit and you fail, then you have a reason for why you failed, as opposed to trying and failing and maybe having to take responsibility.
Oh, I love you said that, because I like to share with people, failure is a moment, it's not a person.
That's great. It's great. Well, listen, Dr. Vibe, I'm real happy that you could be on the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and I look forward to being on your show. I'm going to be on your show. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but it's coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah,
soon come, as we say where my heritage is from, soon come. And I just want to leave with two quick things.
Okay.
If you mess up, when we mess up, we shouldn't be too hard, because you know what? When our proud and stubborn heart refuses to acknowledge that we were wrong and have messed up, we resist humility and rationalizing our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, I mess up. I tell people one of the reasons I'm still here is because I've messed up and I don't quit.
Right.
And you learn more from your mistakes than your successes, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, that's a good lesson. I mean, when things are going well, what is there to reflect upon? You just sit back and enjoy the ride. But then when there's an issue, it really forces you to sit back and think.
Well, also, too, I'm going to share this message for men. I have a question for men. We all have our challenges. We all get into crazy things. My question, I say this to myself all the time, is, do you want to change or do you want the circumstances to change?
Okay.
And I'll leave that, and I'll let that simmer, because a lot of people think the circumstances are going to change and you don't have to. Think about that, because a lot of times we're in a world now, if you don't change, you're going to be changed.
Well, it's certainly a challenging time, and that's why the Good Men Project is getting such traction. And I'm real glad, and I think a lot of people are real glad that you're out there. So check them out, Dr. Vibe Show. What's the exact website for them to find the show? It's
the drvibeshow.com. Go there. All my social media contact information is there. You'll be able to get access. I've done over 2,000 online conversations. I've done over 400 YouTube live stream conversations. And if you're interested in coming on the Dr. Vibe Show, as long as don't swear.
Okay.
And you've got something you want to chat about, I'd say 99.9% you're on and just ready to have a conversation, because as I think I've shared with John earlier, I've had probably around 2,000 people on my conversation, and I call it the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. I will tell you 95% of those conversations I didn't prep for. That's how much of a conversation I really want to drive home with. I tell people, what do you want to talk about? And then we just have a conversation. I just steer the ship. It's all about the person or the friend or friends that come on the show and the audience.
Great.
And that's what we do.
Yeah. It's like Mr. Rogers almost, right? Just
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm rather Dr. Vibe, not Mr. Vibe. And
right.
You know what? I probably should do one other thing, because people are going to ask, how did you get Dr. Vibe as your online name?
Okay.
So I'm gonna do that to get the curiosity off. Again, many years ago when I had hair, I was working at Adidas Canada. I was actually the second person of color hired in their administrative offices. That's another story. And they were having a Christmas party, and I was really getting into the music. And there was a gentleman who was a product manager. Actually, I remember his name, Stuart Smith. And he goes, "Man, you got the vibe. You're Dr. Vibe." That's how I got the name.
And how long ago was that?
Oh, wow. That's a long time ago. But and it's a great thing, because when I go to events or get-togethers and they actually put the name tag on, I put on Dr. Vibe.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, it definitely draws you in. You're like, Dr. Vibe, I wonder what that's all about.
Conversation starts a conversation, and a conversation leads to conversion.
All right. Well, maybe I should start calling myself Dr. Cool. Maybe, what do you think?
It's up to you,
it's up to
man.
me.
If it works, work it, right?
Yeah, right. All right. Well, thanks again.
My pleasure. And you have an outstanding day, and look forward to coming back and sharing with your outstanding audience. And don't quit. You're doing some outstanding stuff. You're doing outstanding stuff. Don't quit. And if you do, I'm going to kick you in the butt to make sure you continue going.
Wise words. Great. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you next week.
Living in a city, when you're in it, watch the people walk by. And if you listen real close, you can hear them talk about their lives. And some hate it, some love it, some are felt, some are just tired. These are the people in the neighborhood, they just trying to make it out right. See, she never wanna be a new
IPMNation.com.